There was a consternation in the feasting hall of the gods, for Death sat drinking alone in the corner, furthest from the doors, and had been there for some time. "What do you here?" demanded the crowd of divines that soon gathered around him. "Did we not send you down to the world of the humans, to grin always before their faces and remind them of their place?" "I have been down to the world of humans," Death replied, and the wine in his goblet rippled from the tremble in his pale old hands as he raised it to his lips. "I do not think I shall soon return there." There came a collective gasp at this. It was not right that Death should linger too long away from the world of humans, for though mortal men would still die, it would be a mere mechanistic process, mere casualty rather than fate, lacking any touch of their divine ordination, a repugnant thought to every god. But though Death was a servant of the gods, and they would be within their rights to simply order him to resume his grinning before the faces of the humans, he was much esteemed by them for his constancy and age. Indeed, when the first gods had been born, Death was waiting there to carry out their will, and he had never yet failed. If the humans had reduced mighty Death to cowering as far from them as he might get, it at least behooved the gods to discover how. Death gave a laugh, bitter and cracking, when they asked what the humans had done. "They were building a ship," he answered as he stared into his goblet, not meeting his master's eyes. "It was a vast thing, large as a city, driven by the very fires of creation. The humans had built things before, and I thought little of it, for no matter what task they set themselves to, rare was the human who would not quail and shiver and set it aside once they saw me grinning before them. But not this time." Death pulled his cloak about him and hunched closer over his wine. "I thought at first that the humans could not see me, that they were somehow blinded to my presence, but at length I discovered that, did I grin and caper closely enough, the humans working on the ship would flinch, just a little, in fear of my touch. But never did one falter at his task. It was then that I realized that it was not that the humans could not perceive me. It was that I was not—" Here Death paused, gathering his strength to say the next words. "That I was not as important as their work." Death stopped and met his master's eyes for the first time, sweeping his black gaze through the throng. I, ancient Death, servant of the gods, stared in the faces of these humans and was dismissed out of hand. There was a current of indignation in Death's tone, but it was an indignation that masked a deeper unease. I sought to discover how such a thing might be. That fear of me had become so minor a thing to these humans, and so I went aboard their ship and began to examine it. That was when... A gulp of wine fortified him to continue. That was when one of them came to me. He patted me on the shoulder. Patted me, and smiled as he did. The tremble in Death's once firm hand worsened, sloshing wine from the goblet. "This mortal thing, this human," he patted me and said, "Sorry, old fellow, but we haven't the time to fear you today. You see, we have heard voices calling from the stars, telling us that others like ourselves are there, and now we have built this ship to go and meet them, our unknown brothers. We fulfill the oldest of our dreams today, and we have no attention to spare for you. Soon enough, perhaps, we shall again quiver as you grin before our faces, but not today." And then he resumed his work, for I, Death, servant of the gods, was of less import than the laying of wires and pounding of metal. And the gods nodded and whispered to themselves, agreeing that such a development amongst the humans was indeed troubling, but such disrespect was no cause for so mighty a servant as Death to shut himself up in the feasting hall of the gods. Death heard his master's words and bowed his head. "It was not this that sent me from the world of the humans," he rasped. "Rather it was what came next. As I stood on the deck of the human ship pondering what I had been told, I was seen by one I had met before, a great warrior at whose shoulder I had trod more than once. He was to command the vessel on his voyage. Perceiving me, he gave such a smile as I have only seen before in the looking-glass. 'Ah,' the captain cried, and pointed at me. 'Let us bring this ancient one along with us. Should our unknown brothers in the stars prove less than brotherly, we may get much use from him there. Make a space in the cargo hold, and bind him there with the rest of our tools.' Death stared into his wine for a long moment, again avoiding the eyes of the gods. But no matter how tightly he clasped his goblet, the ripples refused to be calmed. 'I trust,' he began, but had to lick his thin, pale lips and try again. 'I trust my masters will forgive me for not remaining to discover whether the humans could actually do such a thing.'